I see what you did there, Mike.
I'm trying to stretch this thing out so I'm not super.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're calling from. My name is Charles Sterling. Joining me was another set of my favorite MVPs. I think they're all my favorite MVPs. Seth and Mike, who we just went vacation together, right? We were down with Phil Seamark and we went fishing. And there's even a video of that experience or a similar experience with John Levesque. So something we'll have to send a pointer to. Today, actually, they got a ton of new stuff they're going to share with us. Not only are they going to share with us the layouts that they were working before, some new layouts, actually some new features they're putting in the layouts. They were just sharing them, teasing them with me, actually, I think would be the right word, a couple minutes ago. So guys, I'm going to hand it over to you, and I'm going to manage the Q&A. I think, Seth, you're going to help me with the Q&A, and Mike's going to do most of the presentation. Is that the way this is going to work?
That's the way I like to do things, Chuck. Make Mike do all the work.
Okay, Mike, over to you.
Sounds good. So quick introductions, Mike Carlo. I work for Concurrency out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm a technical architect here and a Power BI MVP, working a ton in Power BI. So I am the owner of Power BI.Tips. I fell in love with the program probably about, right when it came out. I mean, as soon as it was announced in early previews, I was infatuated with it, early 2015. Started blogging about it in 2016 and just kept putting out tools and tips and tricks and things that I'm finding as I learn through the program. So I'm just really passionate about the tool and love promoting the community and providing helps and tips and tricks and tools to enable everyone else to use the tool efficiently. Seth?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Seth Bauer. I am also an infatuator of Power BI. Love the tool. My background is much more in the enterprise space. So spent many years as a SQL database administrator, developer, got into reporting service, Power models, et cetera. So pretty much started.
Cut out just a bit.
Cutting out a bit.
Yeah, there you go. It sounds clear now.
Started my foray from kind of day one, seeing version 2 of Power BI, and kind of fell in love with it right away. So started up a Power BI user group in the Milwaukee area, and that's where I met Mike. And since then, we kind of started talking about Power BI all the time after hours, after our meetings and things, and that kind of led to the partnership and him inviting me to, develop all of the additional things and add to Power BI.Tips, and also spend quite a bit of time on the community forums answering questions and things there. So also a Power BI MVP, and excited to be sharing some of our latest things that we've come up with you today.
All right, I'll kick it off with jumping into our content for today. Let me go over here and get going on a share screen. We will start off with some quick tips. Let's see here. Share screen. Share the desktop.
Yay, it's working.
So there? All right.
Yep.
Just spot checking a couple things.
Yeah.
All right. So we wouldn't be appropriate if we were Power BI.Tips if we didn't start off with a tip or a trick. So if you don't use this today, we'll walk through the example right now. I have a sample report kind of up in front of me right now. The idea here is, when you're doing some report design and report development, you're always trying to make the report look good, engage your users, put the story around your data, not necessarily distracting based on visuals. So the idea here is a feature you can use. If we go to the view ribbon up here, you can actually turn on some grid lines. So one key design principle when you're building your reports is to look around, make sure that your visuals are aligned or matching. So if I turn on this button here, and it's going to be a little hard to see, I'll see if I can zoom in here. You note that there are little dots that start appearing across the page. And these are like little indicators to let you know where the visual lives on the page, how far over it is, what's the adjustment. So what you can do here is you can then grab the visuals, and I'm going to try to just realign some things here so they kind of fit within these dots. There's one. Here's another one. I'm just going to fat finger these around. So you notice I'm using my cursor here and just trying to drag the visuals so they look appropriate. So now I've got two visuals. They're on the page. They're aligned. I can then bring this table, try to align this as well. Now this is okay. It's a good starting place. I have some now alignment with my visuals. But another option here that you can turn on that's also helpful is you have the ability of being able to snap the objects to the grid. So we can also turn that on as well. So if I snap objects to the grid, Now you'll note the behavior has slightly changed. So now it kind of has a snapping effect, which is really slick. It allows you then to really quickly move these visuals around as well. Again, trying to snap them into the right position and location on the page, and the whole thing will align a little bit more cleanly this way. So these are kind of two options that are built into the program. One of the downsides of using this a little bit is you notice here that the grid line on the left-hand side here is a full square, but on the right-hand side of the page, because of the way the pixels are oriented, you get kind of a half little square here. So you don't really get to adjust, where's the center line of my page? What are some options there? So this is a tool that we came up with recently. It's called the grid. So this is a layout that's provided from Power BI.Tips. And I'll transition over here to the page. This is Power BI.Tips, our site. If you click on the layouts option here, kind of in the middle, you'll be able to get presented with all the different layouts that we have. And the one that we're going to focus on for this tutorial is going to be this gridding layout. So we've actually made a custom layout or a custom template for you to consume, and that you can go ahead and use with grids on the background. So we've made a couple options here in this. When you download the file, you'll have a couple files that you've downloaded here. We have a coarse and a fine grid version of this. So if we go open this up now, here's one of the options of gridding. Now we tried to be as flexible as we could with this, and I'll show you how this works. Essentially, we made some Illustrator images and we put these on a page and had the grid lines all aligned for you. We're also putting some red indicators to kind of give you okay, here's the horizontal center and the vertical center of the page. And then as we populate some data here, we'll just throw a little data in here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Load the information. As we want to populate a table or a visual on top of this, we should be able to easily see where this visual will populate on these grid lines. So I have now a bar chart here, and then I can then rearrange this bar chart so it fits a section of this report. Now, another observation here that why we kind of like this is we do give you some additional spacing here. So this is like a 20 pixel by 20 pixel square here in the upper hand corner. And we've already aligned this across the entire page so it's equal on both sides. Again, so that the middle line here is actually down the middle of the page.
Yeah, and that's an important distinction to make, and why we, came up with the grid, or Mike did, was to, allow you to center things. So that's the difference between this grid layout versus the one that's built within the tool.
So I'm going to add a couple more visuals here and kind of give you how this might work or lay out on the page. And now I can sort of split these squares here. I can drop another visual on. The downside of this is now I don't have the ability of snapping to the grid, but at least now I have some more orientation on the page and where we're going to live here on these items. This is the image on this page. We actually do this in 3 different page sizes. So if you download the grids layout from the website, this is the 1720 by 180 or 1280. We have the one for the 4:3 formatting, again with the equalized perimeter spacing for you. And then we also have a letter version of this as well. Again, these are all the standard page sizes that you would get from the default out of the program. So if you click on the paint roller for each of the pages, the page size will be the letter page size. How we did this, so a little bit of tearing this apart a bit here. This is just an image on the back of the page, and you can actually adjust the transparency of the background. So it's just a background on the page here, and if it's too bright here and you want to adjust it, you can adjust it here down to a finer grain detail. So in this first page here, we can adjust the transparency and bring back that a little bit there, so it's subtle as you're designing your report page. You can cancel it or hit X to remove it altogether, or you can just turn the transparency to 0. So we did this once with a background. We also provide files in here to also do it with an image. So if I'm going to go to a different file here, this is a similar Power BI file, has the same formatting of pages, but this time, instead of using the background page image, we're just putting an image on the screen. And so you can interact with this visual a little bit differently. Let me go over here to view. I'm going to turn off these other options here. All right. So this is an image on the page, and I'll show you here how it works. I can actually expand this image. But the idea and the principle behind this is if I want to turn this off, I can go to the view ribbon now. And because this is an image, we can go to the selection panel or pane. If I tick that checkbox, we'll have one item here called the image, and then I can turn that off. And then your grid's either kind of on or off. And in the same function, as we did before, if we click on this, we can adjust the transparency of this as well. So I believe this is under, actually, just kidding. I don't think you can adjust the transparency of a shape or an image. So anyways, this is another one. We've done the same three formats. You can kind of pick how you want to integrate with them. If you want to use the image files, you can. If you want to use the background files, you can as well. All right, let's talk about some other options that we have on the website. One other thing that we've been developing here recently have been centered around a lot of different games. I don't know if you've been following us recently, but there are also, we've been blogging about various games. We've been partnering with Philip Seamark from Radicad, and he's been doing a lot of really cool DAX work. So in this, we've been developing a game series. We have tic-tac-toe, Sudoku, and we have like a Mission Impossible style, kind of like a hangman type game. And the idea here is, within DAX, Philip is generating a bunch of code that allows us to be able to play various games. And the purpose of this is really to push the limits of what DAX can do and really expand your mind around, what are the reasonable possibilities here. So this is all being done with DAX. We've done the graphics for it, but Phil has really done a lot of work around understanding what DAX properties, slicers, filters, other context behind the scenes to help this all work. So if you haven't had a chance to explore some of these are really neat, kind of creative solutions. And there may be aspects of these that you want to incorporate into your actual reports and how they work. So you can, let me escape out of this. With the blog posts on the main homepage, you'll be able to, let's see if I pull one up here, TikTok and Power BI. We give the example game board here that you can play, and then we actually have a link to Phil's blog post as well. You can go look at his blog post and see how he wrote the game. And he has a really detailed, like, line by line, here's the DAX formulas I was using, here's how I created these items. So this is tic-tac-toe. We also have a Sudoku version of the game, and this is a sample image of that. You can actually play Sudoku by clicking on the various squares. It will populate your game board on the left-hand side and then give you a score as you complete the game. And then finally, I think our kind of most creative one was let's go back over here. I'll find the other option. Oops, sorry. Was the DAX Mission Impossible. So this is the hangman version of the game. You pick your game version you want to play by clicking a slider. You click to get started on the game. It loads everything for you, and you basically play the game as if you're disarming a Power BI bomb. So as you click the items with the letters here, as you miss the DAX expression, so you're guessing what DAX expression is evaluating here, and as you click the letters, it will populate the letters onto the game board for you. Ooh, I'm doing pretty good. I don't even know if I can guess this one. What DAX function is this? So the principle behind this game is it's not only you're playing a game, you're actually able to look at the learn DAX function. So every single word that you're guessing is a name of a function that you'd be using inside DAX. So if I show the hint down here, this is summarized columns. So it looks like ignore is the DAX function. So if I start typing some other letters, N-O-R-E. So if you do get,
it's what you do to me all the time.
I know, right? So that would be the function, and then it gives you some indicators there as well. Again, kind of a fun little game, helps you learn DAX as well as being able to integrate some really neat DAX functions behind the scenes. Again, check them out. Look at Phil's blog. You can download all these games from the website, and then you can look at the file, tear it apart, figure out how it works, and maybe incorporate some of those learnings from the DAX pieces that you can use in your own reporting.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend digging into these files a little bit. Talking to Phil is always a fun time in DAX, and what he's done with a lot of these games is solve a lot of the business problems and complex DAX calculations that he's encountering, and making really fun, interesting games around them. And you can actually glean quite a bit by digging into the files themselves and looking at the code that he's generating. So definitely recommend digging into these a bit. As a side note, I did post in there as well, if you really enjoy a lot of our tips and tricks. We had the privilege of speaking at the Business Application Summit in July, and one of our sessions is recorded out there, so be sure to go check that out as well.
one of our more recent developments, and again, those who have followed us, have been doing a lot of these things called layouts. And so to give you a quick overview of what layouts are, they're basically canned templates. So inside these files, they're a file downloadable, a zip file essentially. And in these items, you actually have a number of reports. And we give you some sample reports, and we have more of these shading backgrounds, do some selection of reports and visuals for you. So we've been developing a lot of these recently, and it's been very helpful to both us and people who've been consuming these to get an idea of how many visuals is appropriate on a page, where do the slicers go, what could the color schemes should look like. And one of the things we developed here recently is we actually are adding some new visuals to this layout space. One of which is we're calling Purple Haze, and this is one of the more recent layouts. We released this around the same time as the Business Application Summit. I got it right. There's an old name change here somewhere on the way, and I have to make sure I get the naming right. So this is the layout. This is what this one looks like. So you can download this file. It comes in 2 flavors. So the flavor we're looking at here is basically the demo file. We pre-populate a lot of the visuals for you, to give you kind of like a view of what we think the report would look like. We've also incorporated a number of icons across the page that you can use. We've incorporated newer technologies such as bookmarks and buttons. And you'll notice here as we hover across these items across the top here, you're getting some user feedback across the top by seeing the buttons actually change the formatting of the page here. So because I'm in the Power BI desktop, I'm going to use Control-Click to click on various elements. So we have, in this particular report, we have a filter pane. So one of our kind of big pet peeves around, when you're building a report, very newer report builders will build a lot of filter context. There's a lot of slicers on the page, but that really eats up all your landscape for any of the visual space. So what we incorporate in a lot of these reports that we produce and these layouts is the ability to be able to show all the filter context inside its separate little pop-out or fly-out window. So if I click these items here, you can see that we can adjust this, and then if I click the back button, all those items will stay selected. Another alternative to this is being able to have a bookmark or an action triggered on this Remove Filters button. So this is another button we're using with an icon underneath. If I click on this one, it'll then return the report back to its original state. So clicking the filter again, you'll note that the product subcategory now has nothing selected like I selected earlier. Another key aspect of these reports is how do you navigate the report? So again, we have all these items across the top here. This is a 4-page navigation. If I click on the accessories page, you'll note we go to a new page. This is a brand new layout, new visuals. It's kind of following that same color theme, but now you can see all the elements that belong to the accessories portion here. Again, you can navigate to bikes and clothing as well, and I'll also navigate you through the report. So go ahead. You were picking up that one pretty well. Go ahead, Seth.
Did you catch the inhale?
I did.
What I wanted to interject is you'll see, layouts are an interesting look at how Power BI has progressed over time, as what we try to do is incorporate different things into the layouts of the new features. So Purple Haze was the first report or layout that we developed where we weren't just using the icons as actions, but putting the new button feature over so the end user has the ability to see that there's a visual change in the toggle and thus indicate to them that, yes, this is a clickable item that will take you somewhere or do something. So we're showing this layout, if you're not familiar with layouts, in the Power BI desktop, but from an end user perspective, they wouldn't know that this is multiple pages. It's to them just a single page that allows them to click into these different areas. And what we find is we saw a comment in the chat, go Vikes. I don't think that was the driver behind it, since we're Packer fans here, but maybe we'll have to develop a Packer specific report. But you'll see as things are progressing, and with our next demo, some of the things that we're trying to do and develop in those layouts. But like I was saying, from an end user perspective, what we love and we're really excited about is all of this new functionality to really create almost web-like experiences for our end consumers. And it just opens up the doors of different ways in which they can navigate and get a different look and feel when doing their analytics in Power BI.
So we always get the question, and there's always something in the comments at some point, how'd you do that? How are you getting the navigation pieces here? So what I'm going to do just really briefly here is just kind of copy one page here. I'm going to duplicate this page, and I'm going to start tearing things apart. I'm going to start showing you kind of behind the scenes on what was built here. So I'm going over to the view ribbon, and there's two key windows here that are very important to note when we build these things and things you'll want to look at if you download one of these layouts. If I click on the bookmarks pane and the selection pane, and I'll just briefly touch on these two features here. The selection panel is really every element on the page. So as I work my way down this list here, where's my little cursor? There we go. Oops. If we work down our way down this page here, we have all these different elements, and these are the visual elements on the page. And you'll note there's a little eyeball here on the right-hand side. So what we're doing with a lot of these tricks here is as we present items and take them away, we're really using the hide and show feature of various items. So these slicers here, this is really our filtering panel, right? So all the slicers we talked about earlier, they're not hidden, or they're hidden at this point because the eye is turned off. We also have shapes that we put around the page as well. So like this shape here below, these slicers is really that purple bar that pops out once you click on the filter window. And then how do we navigate and manipulate what is shown and what is not shown? That's where we're using bookmarks. So this section here, this is the main page, and we've named them appropriately so you kind of know what's going on each of these pages. So this main page is the base page. If I want to show the slicer, here's how I show slicers. If I want to clear the filters, I'm clicking this bookmark. And so I'm going to navigate through a couple of these. So if I click on main page base, this is essentially just navigating me to that main page. If I click on the slicer item, I click on this, and you'll now note all of these buttons and other elements here have changed. So I'm actually showing and hiding various elements. So the whole slicer section that was not revealed and the little shape that supports it is all here. If I click on these elements, I can actually click on the element themselves, and you can see I highlighted this slicer over here on the right-hand side. And in the shape is the broader purple shape here in the background. So if I want to really select individual elements on the page, I'm actually just clicking on the items over here in the selection panel. Also, we have some other items here that are kind of showing and hiding various large elements here. This is the info button. So if I click on this button, we're able to go to navigate to a separate page altogether. So that is really just driving to a brand new page. And the idea here is the info button takes you to a separate page, and you can put a bunch of report descriptions and other elements here on the page as well. And then you can navigate with a back button to return to the previous page.
There was a great comment in the chat window that we typically apply as well, and Mike can demonstrate how you would be able to take one of those selections, whether it's a shape or image, and apply a name to it. So if we
great.
So the comment was to make those named things which are easier to find on the page.
Yeah. So look at this. This is awesome, right? Slicer, slicer, slicer. They're just all the same item here. So let's go to the main page here, and let's just show the slicers just so we can see them on the page. So I will click on the slicer button here. Now let's take, for example, this first one, item category here on the left-hand side. So instead of having this thing named slicer, there's actually a trick to let you to do that and configure it. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm actually going to click on the paint roller option here. So first thing is select the slicer that I'm interested in changing the name. Click on the paint roller. Under here, under title, I'm going to turn that on, and then I can say product category. Moved on me. And now what I can do is turn that title back off. And by doing that, I've renamed the visual. So if I leave the title on, I see over here on the right-hand side, that is the physical name of the tile itself. But additionally, I now have a new name in the selection window. So now I have this product category portion here as well. So if you're dealing with a lot of elements. This is super helpful to help you kind of recategorize and name things appropriately. So let's do this again one more time. Clicking on another slicer, going to turn on the title in the settings window. This one we're going to call product. Moved on me again. Product subcategory. Good, typed it right. Turn it off. And now I have another item here named on the right-hand side, product subcategory. So that's how we would be able to name these elements inside the selection window. And you can do this for everything. It doesn't matter. So if I'm even looking at an image or a button, everything is nameable. So I'm clicking the very bottom image here, which is this little image all the way up here on the right-hand side. Again, turning on the title. This is the filter icon. Turning it back off. I've just now named that item on the list there. Great question. Any other good questions we should go over here real quick? All right.
Or unmute, Chuck. Anything else coming through on the chat window?
No, we are actually covering it. That was from Dan Heron and Victor Roca, actually, where they'll get both of those guys to use that same tip. So great tip.
Awesome. So I'm also going to do one more thing here just to show you a little bit deeper what's going on with the level of elements here. So I'm going to just look at this accessories item here. I'm going to pull off part of this. So I'm going to actually grab some of these items here. The button itself, here's the button. So the button, I'm actually just pulling this away. This other part back here in the this kind of like this shaded purple section here. If I go to the page settings, and then I'll turn off the page background, right? So I'm going to change the transparency to nothing. You'll see that that's where that came from. So this is physically the button right here. And then these are all the properties of this button. So if I click on the button itself, and we go over to the properties of this, now I have button text, so I can have all these different default states. So this is where I'm setting up the default state says accessories, how I align the fonts, and then I have different states here. So I'm looking at this little drop-down menu. So when I'm building the interactions of the button, right? So if I hover over it, I want to do something different. I can even put another action on this. When I click on it, it can actually say something differently. So the standard button text is a default state here. If I go on hover, the name is still the same, but actually I'll change this here. Let's go accessories, hover. So you can see what it's doing. And then if I change it now to on press, I can actually change this again. We go back over to the button again. You'll note that it says accessories by itself. And let's turn the background back up here again. It's a little hard to see without the background. So let's put the page background back up. All right, so we now have the accessories. So now you can see that we're having the accessories doing the hover action. And then when I click on it, it'll tell me it's pressed. So those are the three different actions you can have when you're using a button. And most everything else here is built the same way. This is just a button that's blank. So this is another element here. It's a clear button that has nothing on it. The only thing that it's doing is hovering and showing like a transparency background. And then the element below that is this standard or a little icon that we developed. So that's just an image that we dropped on the page. So that's really how most of this works. There's a page background, an image that we're using, and then we just take a button and we cover the image with a little button. So then we get that interactivity that we want. All right. I think that about wraps up the version of Purple Haze and a lot of the details that are going on in this particular layout.
Xedge 182 actually brings up an issue that we were talking about down in Ocean Shores as to when do you guys do layering and all the challenges of Z ordering and the clicking versus a new page? I know I've got some definite opinions there.
Sure.
But what do you guys use as best practices to when you actually start layering and hiding things on top of each other versus I'm just going to go out and copy the page and actually just make those
Sure.
other visuals go away so I don't have to deal with them?
You want to take that one, Seth?
I'll take a stab, and you'll have another opinion, I'm sure.
That's true. That is so true.
I guess my default stance is that I'll create a separate page and navigate to that unless I'm doing a couple things like slicers. For sure, it's just a shape that I can drop onto the existing, so there's no need to recreate a page. So I guess it's more along the how many elements would I need to recreate versus do I do I layer things on a single page versus going to the next one? Where I would say recently I kept everything on a single page where I had a ton of layers was where I had multiple different ways in which I could select multiple slicers and configurations of that they wanted a line chart or the x-axis to change, and I did all of that on a single page to kind of streamline my thought process around I'm just changing an underlying measure as opposed to a complete modification. So I don't know if that's really answering the question exactly. Another use case I've had in the past where I would keep things on page are if I want to look at things in both a trend as well as categorical, it's nice to just have a single button on the page that can flip between these two objects, and then I'll layer the visualizations on the page to just be in the same space versus I'm going to have a completely different layout each time, and I'm going to look at different aspects of the business or particular use case area, then I'll typically build another page.
Yeah, I'll add a little flavor to that too. I think a lot of what I design pages to is I look at the data context. So if I'm, kind of what Seth said earlier, if I want to change the data context of this particular visual from a bar chart to a line chart, those two elements make sense on the same page. But if I want to drill into the details of these bars, or if I want to navigate an experience to something where I'm showing additional data in addition to this page, then I would navigate to a different page or have a total visual context. So a lot of what we do is we design pages around like, this is the accessories view of our data. This is the bikes view. This is our revenue projections. And in the context of that revenue page, what are all the common elements that I'd want to be designing? Is this a bar chart or line chart? Those are things you would keep on the same page and build interactions around that same story. So that's where I usually try and break the pages. My page breaks usually come around content generation for the end user, and how do you tell that data story? High-level overview pages, yeah, they're going to be high-level summary data. A new page would make sense to go to the details. And this also incorporates, if you right-click on some of the items, this one doesn't have it, but if you click on a different bar and you want to drill through to another page, if you want that functionality, that almost demands a second page right out of the gate. So that's another kind of thing you can look at and evaluate for your data story. Is, do I need to drill to more details, or am I going to use this filter context on the overview page to get me another view on a separate page?
And I guess I probably should have started this way first. As you get used to the bookmarks and interactions between buttons, it's always easier to do multiple pages because you can kind of segment out a couple things, not only your thought process, but you're going to have less to deal with in the selection windows and number of bookmarks page and things like that. So it's until you organize it in your head, you may want to start off on a simpler phase to just go page by page because you can hide those.
Yep. Yeah, it's a pure level of navigation pieces, right? So if you did this entire report on just this one page, each page has a number of selection items. You'd be doubling up or tripling up a lot of other items here. And so each of these pages is unique in their items or elements on the page. You'd be adding just that many more items. And without a really good foldering mechanism, it gets almost unwieldy.
I noticed a comment as well in here, Danny Dennison, thanks. He wanted to do some of these come in mobile format, and yes, you can certainly do that. A lot of and we should actually include a page in some of our future layouts. So that's a great recommendation. But yeah, we would design a background to fit that that aspect ratio for sure.
Yeah, one of the challenges right now with the reports that we've been building today is when you get to a mobile background, mobile is very much a different design element. You don't really get buttons as much. You're basically be able to drop visuals on a page. So a lot of the interaction between all these elements here, clicking around, is a lot harder to build inside the mobile experience if you're building just the mobile layout screen. If you're on the mobile experience, if you turn your phone landscape, you still get the full report just as it interacts here. So you still get the full functionality of accessories and clicking the buttons and navigating pages. So that's also kind of a caveat that you want to think about when you're looking at building phone layouts as well.
Also reminded me of a whole bunch of requests I wanted to make of Amanda and Chuck. So thank you for that.
All right. I think any more kind of good questions? I think this is a good point to move on to the kind of the next piece here. All right. Not hearing anything. We'll keep going. So this was Purple Haze. We introduced this about a month or so ago, and we have some new introductions we'd like to bring to the family here of the layout family. Let's go over to the newest family of the Friends. So we're taking a little bit of a different spin here. This is our new layout. It'll be out this week. It's called The Bend, because we have the little swoopy thing here on the left-hand side. And we're using a lot of the same design elements, but we're giving a little bit more freedom in this particular report. So you'll notice we have some of the similar concepts. We have icons up here in the right-hand corner that help you navigate and do filter contexts on the page. But something else you wouldn't note automatically is if we look here, there's actually elements here that are showing you to click here on these various items. So in this case, the layout we're giving you now only has the navigation pieces built for you and the navigation icons for maybe adding a filter window. So if I click this button here, you can see there's a filter window that pops up, and then you can close that filter window here. So we're building just some basic elements to kind of get you started, giving you more flexibility to put the elements and design more that you would want to put on the page. If I click on this red box, it'll then navigate you to a different page layout as well as the yellow one. So again, you're going to see the page kind of change in shape here as you move across here. So anyways, these are kind of the new version of some of the layouts. This ones are going to be released this week. And with this one, we actually have some additional elements here. Seth, you want to talk about the template page?
Yeah, sure. So I think the biggest difference with what we're trying to do in this new set of layouts is kind of get a feel for how you are all using the particular layouts, whether it's what we've shown thus far, where we go down to a really detailed level by providing all the additional visualizations, and really all you have to do is plug in your data to get immediate value, versus I think we've kind of taken a step in not a different direction, but just trying out a new type of layout when we think about how we interact with layouts and use them on a day-to-day basis. And when we think about that, we kind of take a step back and not focus so much on the visualization building right out of the gate, but we already have gone through the wireframing and we know the number of visualizations pretty much that we want to produce on a page, which is why we also give you all those different backgrounds and slices and dices with the different sizes to allow for those types of layouts that you want to see. So rather than go all the way down to that detailed level, we're trying out this new lighter frame of layout where we're going to introduce a particular layout in a series, and you'll see what I mean by that in just a minute. So this template page is designed to show you, from a snapshot from our website, hey, what icons do I get? What's the particular color theme, and what is the layout going to look like from a high level perspective? So these icons are all embedded in the report, and you'll be able to reuse those throughout any of the report pages. And we've embedded a color theme already along those lines, but you can obviously replace that with something else if you'd like. So outside of just the background, like Mike went through, we've added in the additional navigation, so you get the interaction between those pages, which we figure is always kind of a benefit and an add. And in the cells of this one, we were kind of thinking that cards would be a really good use case that could still fit in those cells alongside maybe KPIs as well, or particularly you could maybe even fit some slicers in there if you want to remove the navigation button. So kind of giving you as the end user a little bit more flexibility without adding all the visualization pieces in there to kind of see how this gains traction versus our existing layout perspective. And then there's also one other additional element that we're going to be adding to all of our layouts, which was also a recent add that I'll throw back to Mike to talk about.
Sure. And I was just going to try and show you here, hey, I just threw a little bit of data in here and show you kind of our vision for potentially what this would look like. Here's a card that we dropped on this page. Let's just change the data label here to a nice white color so it pops a bit, and maybe turn off the category label here. There we go. So something like this could be easily incorporated on your report. You can figure out what labels make the most sense here, and then when you click on that, you could go to a navigation page that would be relating to that data point. One of the other options we're bringing in here is, there are elements of our visuals. Let's drop a quick visual in here. Let's see if I can put a quick bar chart in here. I'm just going to add something very basic. All right, with a lot of visuals, excuse me, you'll get other options. So there's like drill through options. We have an ellipsis. We have a focus mode. So inside the visual itself, there's actually a number of other features that the report user would consume. So let's change this background here just a little bit so it's a little bit easier to see on this page. Yeah, there we go. So if I click on these items, I click on the bar, this item, we're talking about these type of elements here. So, what is this dot? What does that mean? I had this little expand square item, and what does that mean? So now we're coming up with a brand new report page that's entirely dedicated to helping end users or your report users consume your report. So as you or the report author, you'll be building items with drill through. You'll have visuals with the ellipsis on them. This little square that says, hey, we're in the focus mode. What does that look like? If you're using hierarchies in your report, these icons will appear on your other visuals. So, but what do they mean? How do they interact? How do we use them? So on all the new layouts that we're building, these will be included, and with them will be a brief description around how you would use this feature with a link or URL link to a tutorial video, really brief. I mean, we're trying to keep them as short as possible, 2 to 3 minutes max. So that way, as you publish your reports, you can use these elements right within your report already. So let me show you what this would look like in an actual report.
So as Mike is digging into that, the purpose behind here, obviously, I think is pretty apparent. We're going to be building more and more on top of this as time goes on, and including this in our previous layouts so that we have a comprehensive list for you to just embed in your reports so that your end users know exactly what's going on or have the resources available to them to search those things down.
And that's been one of our common we'll say common interfaces with a lot of users. We'll give a report to someone and they just won't know what to do. Like, well, I'd really like it if I could make this bigger. Well, you can. Here's how to do it. Or, hey, I would like to download the data. Well, how does that work? Well, that's using the ellipsis. So then you can actually have those conversations and point to this page inside your reports and say, here's the various elements that you need to know about this report. So this is a report that's been published to PowerBI.com already. With this is already the links. So there, it's basically it looks like an image page here. There's really nothing to click on. But when you click on one of these elements here, demo of drill through, it'll actually take you to a custom page. And with this custom page is a full video. And I won't play it because it'll actually start, well, I guess I could play it and mute it. But it'll actually walk through the video here, and it'll actually give you, step-by-step instructions, how to use this. It'll walk you through a couple pages of how this video would work, how you'd use this particular feature. This is one particularly talking around drill through, and this gives you the navigation around that whole element here. Again, all the video is available for you. All your end users can consume it, and then they'll understand how a drill through feature would work. So for each one of these elements, every single one links to a separate page, giving you only the specific details around using that particular feature. Again, totally geared towards the end user of your reports. This is also available as its own separate layout. So what I'm showing here is not the report page that we were showing you earlier, the bend. Instead, this is actually a separate layout. It's called report features. So if you go to, show you how to get to this. Go to Power BI.Tips. If you navigate to, I believe it's all of our layouts, and you'll see this new one here, kind of down middle way down the page. It's called report features. So this is a dedicated layout to just having various report features. And again, as we learn about more features, if we have more time, we'll document all these in video format and be able to continue giving a more robust list of all the end user features of your reports. Feel free to use it, download this, use this as your base template to get going on all your report development. And with that, we'll talk a little bit more around the other, the family of reports that we're building for layouts for the bends. So this was the first report you saw was the original color. We actually have a second report. This is like a blue version of the bend report. Again, same functionality as before, but now we're doing a different kind of color theme. Again, with a similar formatting for all the pages, giving you different breakouts for how you would want the visuals to lay out on each page. And then we even have a third report. So this is another version, a darker blue version of the report. Again, all stylized to match. So the colors are all kind of matching a style color on the page.
Yeah, and so the blue gradient is, kind of a take on a little bit more of a professional looking report. I think it'll go a long way in serving multiple purposes. And then a special call out with this one. I loved the look and feel of this color theme, which you'll actually find in the theme gallery on the community site. The theme itself was posted under the Actuaries Planning. So go check that out if you want to download that color theme, or you'll have the availability to download our layout with that theme embedded shortly by the end of the week. So we're going to have these 3 layouts published to the website by the end of this week. But I loved the background color of this one, and we modified it a little bit and then added in the backgrounds, the white backgrounds, to make the visualizations kind of stand alone versus getting lost in some darker features, because that doesn't always work with everybody's data sets. So.
And with that, we've pretty much got it all wrapped up for all the elements and new things that we've released recently. So stay tuned for all these new updates. We'll be building and bringing a lot more of these guys to you. Please give us feedback. What things do you like? What would you like to see? We have comments enabled on all of the various layouts that we're producing. We'd love to hear from you and get more feedback on what would make sense for you and how we can help you build reports quicker and faster.
Yeah, especially with the new style of layout. Your feedback definitely, like Mike said, appreciated, because we'd love to spend time where you're getting the most value out of things. So please, in whatever format, send us your feedback.
There was one question from the Peanut Gallery. I don't know if that's the right term. That was asking, on your swoopy thing on the left-hand side that you've got there, Mike, are those buttons, or did you use the rectangle shape? And I think the question is probably more important. Do you have a preference as to when you use one versus the other?
That's a great question. So these are all buttons. And the reason we're using buttons versus a shape is we have the hover feature. So if I click on this element here, you'll note that it says button text up here. So we're actually using it as a button. And the reason we're doing this is because on the hover, we're able to say click here. So this is a deliberate choice to give that user feedback of when you're hovering over an element. And a shape, so let's just do a shape here. So if I just drop a shape on the page, and if we can do the same functionality, I can trigger actions on top of the shape if you click it. So I can go over here to the shape. Over here on the action, I can turn it on. I can then enable a bookmark. And then I can pick what bookmark I would like to navigate to. So let's say we're going to make this bookmark navigate to page 5. But when I hover over the shape, the cursor changes, but that's it. It's very subtle that there's a clickable link. Actually, you'll notice here, it says control. Let's see if I can zoom in on that. Control click here to follow link. Actually, it faded out before I could let it screenshot there. But that's the only indicator, the only visual indicator. But this seems a little bit more compelling to us. Again, why we like to use the buttons is you really can make a stunning pop out and make it action towards the user. Again, this is really where we're talking about moving away from just pure report design. And this is more like UI UX development.
Yeah, and just to add to what Mike said, the buttons are definitely the preferred approach, because you can put anything you want underneath them, right? So if we have card values, and inherently I'm not going to know whether or not I'd be able to do something, the ability to change the color of the button on hover or add text like click here, etc., is a visual cue for the end user to just innately understand that, oh, I can do something, versus where we were at even before buttons, where we were sticking icons on the page and by doing so saying, yes, you can click these elements, but now with buttons, we're giving visual indicators that, yes, this is a clickable action for you as the end user.
And this metaphor that you guys are using, this is pretty powerful. I do storyboarding classes as well. And one of the things I just did at our local government is I took a picture of their campus, and I created hotspots for all the buildings on the Washington government campus by using this exact same step. So they click on their building, and it takes them into reports specific to them. So it's a map.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and you can actually choose. Well, you can do a choose your own adventure, right? You're facing a building to the west, and you actually see the building to the west. So David Eldridge, who my next webinar is on SVG images, should go out and redo his Zork game using real images and buttons. The other thing too that you can control here, that using this metaphor, that's really important, is a lot of people find that their end users get lost in the drill through and the clicks and the focus modes. And if you just control the clicking by going out and putting buttons on top of the entire image, you get to decide what their experience is. So they no longer are going to be using the Power BI defaults and get stuck into, how did I drill into here? I'm now seeing quarters. I'm not even seeing the dates anymore. And people get lost. So at least my people get lost.
And I will also point to that too. Another option that we found that is very helpful is this home button. So I'm going to make this, we'll bring it over here. Hopefully I can bring it over here. Oh, I can't because it's just an image. The home button I think is also very relevant. This is an icon that we use a number of times on a lot of our visuals, but this is something I think is important for people to use and consume is, once you get lost in the report somewhere, I'm buried in a page deep and on a couple different visuals. Where do I go from there? How do I get back to what I need to be? So this is another aspect or another design aspect or element that it seems to be very relevant and very useful for end users. Where do I go back? How do I reset? Same thing with the filter reset button too.
Yeah, the filter reset button is a huge time saver, especially in some of those complex reports where your analyst is doing a ton of different slicing. Just having that reset my filter context, we've heard a lot of great feedback from.
All right, guys. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to you to actually close, if that's okay.
Yeah, sounds good. So I have one more maybe last nugget that goes along with this is the idea that once you have some of these layouts that are open, how would you connect or bolt in data? And one neat technique that we use is under the get data, you could model all your data from your normal data source. But if you publish your report to Power BI, the service, you can actually go after your data set directly from the service. So if I click on the service here, I can actually go to my workspace or something that has data. Here we go. I actually have information in here and I could go right out the data from here. So if I hit load, this is using the live connection between your report, the layout, and the data source. So with this, I actually automatically get all the model data that I would want. So you can, kind of break your thought into, hey, if I need a model data, I can publish a report that has modeled data. And then if I'm using a layout, I can come back after the fact and consume all that data through this interface. It kind of keeps this very clean. There's not a lot of extra buttons to click on here. So, and this kind of gives you a version of a file that is not muddied up by all your development space or building extra tables. You can then come right in and quickly consume all this stuff. So if I can then right away start building data right off of a model that's already existing somewhere else in the service. So, and with that, we will wrap it up.
Just like Mike to cram in one more tip and
one
trick.
More.
Love it.
There's like 4 minutes left. I can get one more.
So we will for sure have the bends to keep a lookout for those on the site. Those will be coming within the next couple days. We definitely appreciate you joining us today. We have a lot of fun producing this content and hope you get value. So obviously, please give us your feedback so we know which direction you'd like us to head in the future.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, go ahead, it's Mike.
No, appreciate it. Thanks, guys, and I would love to do one again. Send Chuck your topics. Like, what else do you want to know about? We'll do another one with them.
We'll have to do one at a more New Zealand friendly time. We'll have Phil on the call as well.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks, we've got David with how to use SVG images from measures. That's crazy, crazy stuff if you haven't played with that. And then next week, I know I just mentioned 2 weeks out, but next week I might get Nikhil on the call and actually do commenting and dashboards. I don't know if you saw that was actually a blog post we just put out yesterday where you can now comment your dashboard. And yes, it's coming to reports as well. So we're going to see if we can get him down for next week. Otherwise, positively in 2 weeks, we've got David Edersol with doing SVGs and Power BI. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you. Take care.